Hey guys, welcome to On the Trail with Kevin and Scott. I'm Kevin, that's Scott, and we have a guest over here in the other block. And I'll let Scott tell you what show number this is since he forgot to tell me the show number. And that's his job.
Hi, I'm Scott, the slapstick parts guy with the ability that Kevin and I did not discuss who's opening the show. So a nice little awkward pause there for a minute where we both went, oh, oops. So it is show 210. And of course, as I'm staring in this box, I made the joke earlier with Kevin, here's a story of a lovely lady and all this because it looks like the Brady Bunch in our screens right now. But I just wanted to say hello, and while we always share what works for us, what didn't, remember, it's up to you to read the instructions, and please follow them. And with that, I have to say, because I wrote it down, because it's really important, we have with us today a good friend of the show. He is the man, the myth, the legend, and you've seen him on all the TJ and all the Jeep forums when someone says, hey, my transmission doesn't shift well, or hey, my Jeep doesn't.
O2 sensors are all going bad at once.
So, and this man is the epitome of customer service.
Yeah, that's true.
Mark Cantrell from Wranglerfix. Mark, good afternoon. How are you, sir?
Those are hard words to follow up. I don't know. Look around and see who you're talking about. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been a few years. Hint, hint, nudge, nudge.
Real quickly, did we want to record video on this?
That's up to you, Scott.
Did you want to record, Mark? Because I can edit this. Well, if we're okay.
It should say starting recording right now.
Okay, so we're going to
let you know that you're being recorded. We're 3 seconds in. So we missed the intro on the recording. And Scott, you can edit that out or leave it in for our listeners.
Well, yeah, too, something like that. But all of that. Hi, Mark. How things been with you?
As you can tell, we follow a very rigorous, well-planned schedule for these shows.
It's throwing spaghetti against the wall sometimes. So, Mark, yeah, pretty much. So how are things down there in Miami? Do you guys staying dry, or as far as South Florida? I don't know exactly where. I can't remember exactly where you're located, but how are things with you, sir?
We are doing well. We're right in the heart of Davie, Florida, and yes, we were a part of that recent biblical deluge that we received a month of rain in 24 hours.
Yeah.
And, but we're doing good. We're kicking butt and taking names down here.
That's awesome. So now you can tell people about the water tightness of your ECUs. Direct tested.
Absolutely.
I was having fun looking at the pictures of I-95 closed, not due to an accident, just due to the fact that it was now, what is it, the river I-95.
It was an interesting 24 to 48 hours. Like I said, I've lived here since 75, and you get to see a little something different every year, whether it's a hurricane or just a summer squall that came through, and this was nothing more. It won't be named or labeled anything other than just a flood.
Right.
Okay.
But it was interesting nonetheless.
So are you going to branch out into boat ECMs too?
We I drove the lifted Jeep that day, and we didn't have any problems.
Okay. Good. Well, that's good. So they swim well.
Yes.
So let's see. I was going to say, since we've talked to you, there's been at least, JLs had come out, but now we've got the JTs and all that kind of stuff. So has that changed your business at all?
The newer computers really haven't started having the problems that are typical on some of the other Jeep years. The push-button Jeeps, 18 and higher, have an additional layer of security in there where we actually need the ECM back to extract the information out of the push-button start. It's EEPROM information in there that it's a second layer of security, if you will.
So it takes an extra step for those later ones for you to replace the ECUs?
Yeah, for anyone.
Okay.
Anyone, not just us. There's an algorithm where we just need the original and to get that algorithm copy it over and clone it, for a lack of a better word, suck the information out of there, program it, and then go. But all of those later vehicles, they don't want companies like us in there, and they're doing everything they can to keep us out.
Yeah, but that's kind of one of those things that every once in a while the business world kind of has to get knocked on its feet and go, wait a minute, there is such a thing as your intellectual property, but there's that whole right to service mode.
Right to repair
comes up. Yeah. Right to repair. Yeah, that's the correct term. So you're working around it, which I commend you on. I commend you on, because it's nice to have other options.
Yeah. They get you coming and going if you get a quote dealer only part. So, and they usually wind up buying it from a company like ours and then just marking it up.
Yeah. Says Scott over there dying since he's in that world.
No, you have no idea when it comes, because my majority of my business now is used cars, and you wouldn't believe how many times I've heard, go to eBay, go this, find this guy, do this. I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. If someone's in my service drive, I got to do X, Y, Z. But when it comes to a used 2019 Highlander, I got to go scour the earth. Okay, yeah, hypocrite.
Speaking of X, Y, and Z, very good segue. We have more X, Y, and ZJ computers than the internet.
Nice.
You guys have actually been to our place, so we've grown even since your last visit.
Wow.
And we happened upon a good load of them, so we do truly have more of those older computers to keep those older rigs on the road.
Good.
That's incredible. That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Folks, just what he's referring to is we were down there several years ago and walked into his, I don't know if you'd call it a storage room, his hoard, his security vault, whatever. And it was a wall or two or three of ECUs from all makes and models. And it was from when ECU started coming in, and the only thing you needed in there to finish it off was back in a corner, a little room with Papa Joe, who knows how to tune carburetors and set points, because that really was the predecessor to the ECUs.
Yeah.
And rent him out. Oh, you're having problem with your 1942? Let me send Phil to you here. He moves slow, but he does a good job.
Yeah, that's it's interesting you talk about all this, because we never really discussed it with you on the show, but there was an adventure a couple of years, because right when we came down, it was right about when this happened, is that when you have a company called Wranglerfix, you had a gentleman send you a pair of jeans. And I remember this, and I could tell you what, man, when I told a couple people the story, and I still tell the story today of what you did for this person, I'm not going to steal your thunder, I'm going to let you tell it. But again, when I talk about the legendary customer service, this man's on point. So, Mark, why don't you regale us with that story?
Yeah, that's a older fella from Texas sent us this pair of jeans, and he sent us a whole long, drawn-out story about how he'd been a Wrangler customer for years, and he just sent us his pair of jeans, and he wanted them fixed. And he just Googled Wranglers and fix and came up with us. And yeah, that I don't recall his name right now, but very, very funny story. And I've had literally calls like that all the time. Recently, just last week, I've got I was in a rear-end collision in Fort Lauderdale, and I need a bumper put on. I have a 2020 Jeep Wrangler. We just do computers. Oh, but you were called Wranglerfix.
Well, yeah. Well, tell us, though, because a lot of the listeners now don't know the end of the story about the gentleman with his Wranglers, i.e. blue jean type Wranglers. And how did you take care of him? I think that's important.
We sent him a pair of Wranglers. We actually wound up sending him a whole new pair of Wranglers and a little note. I think you guys took pictures of the note.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
remember right now. It's
Oh, I remember
Yep.
you got
yeah,
the.
it's an interesting. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, I remember you got the family involved, and like they videoed him opening the letter or something like that, or if I can remember the story correctly, that was great.
Yeah, it was. It's something that, like I said, it's you run into a little bit of different, little bit. Give enough time, you'll run into anything. I promise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We've got some interesting stories, to say the least.
It is, but I can tell you that I continue to run into folks who talk to us about that at events and locations, and they're like, I didn't know what to do. I couldn't get it to run, and we tried, and next thing I know, Mark's like, yep. Give me your VIN, give me this. Here it is, and it showed up, and he says, and I plug it in, and I have a Jeep again. And so my hat's off to you. You've made a lot of people, particularly last year when I made the run from here all the way up to central Pennsylvania to the Bantam Heritage Jeep Festival. I heard more than a few people, you get into conversation about it, and we talk about the ECU issues, and people go like, oh, I've heard about them. Yeah, hopefully you heard about them through me, but, they're like, yeah, does it really? And then everybody else goes around, do they really fix them? I said, they do better than fix them. They get a new or a repurposed chassis and they have reprogrammed around the known chip flaws to create a new ECU with your original tune that shouldn't have the same failure points as the factory ones. And I said, it's you kind of pay for that level of expertise and effort. And I said, and they're like, well, how do you know they worked? And I said, you see the black TJ back there? I'm running the shit out of one of them right now. I'm from Florida. I'm up here in center Pennsylvania. That is not a swear word anymore, is it?
It is.
Oh, okay.
It's
you're
fine.
still holding on to you're holding on to George Carlin's 7 words you can't say on TV, aren't you?
I had to take a test in that in school.
So, yeah.
Yeah, we've been, unfortunately for TJ owners, there's 10 years of computers sitting there in arguably the worst spot for a piece of delicate electronics, the most delicate piece of electronics and the hottest part of the engine compartment. What could possibly go wrong? We've been blessed over the years now, going on 6 years, to do as we always do. We put customers first, and we value and earn our reputation one customer, one computer at a time. And that's the formula I started with, and few little honed points, and here we are 6 years later.
Mm-hmm. Now,
Awesome.
Now, last time we talked, obviously you've cut your teeth in the diesel industry from conversations we've had. Any have you branched out other than any more Jeep stuff, or like you're doing more of the Power Strokes or the Cummins, or?
We've always done the Cummins stuff. That's actually where I started.
Right. Was
the Cummins and Power Stroke and Duramax. So we've always had that running in the background. Still deal with a lot of diesel shops, 4x4 shops across the country, and so we are doing a lot of the other Dodge Chrysler Jeep stuff, 3747, Hemi, Hellcat, all those computers, because it's Dodge Chrysler Jeep electronics, which voltage irregularities and wiring loom issues lead to electronic issues, and the looms on Dodge Chrysler Jeeps, as we know, are not good. And then when you have problems with the loom, it creates electronic issues.
Yep. You can only dump so many excess amps into an ECU before it decides that it's not going to play anymore.
Right. It's on some of these years, particularly 05, 06, it's not a question of if, but when. And the earlier years, if you change the capacitors and do some preemptive stuff, you can prolong the life.
What would you say would be the average life of a computer?
It depends on your rig. And it also depends on how you keep your grounds. You keep your powers and grounds, make sure your batteries are nice and clean. And my advice is don't give anyone a jump, carry a jump box, buy them a battery, give them a tow, because their problems quickly become yours. The calls go something like this: "Hey, Mark, I was just giving somebody a jump, and now my Jeep won't start. Reckon I blew that computer up." Yeah.
That's good to know.
Yeah, it's the power to the Wrangler PCM, particularly the late TJ series, was unregulated, Scott.
Oh.
So if you spiked the current system from the battery, you could spike all the way through the ECU.
Yeah. I did not know that. I learned something new today.
Yep.
And if you have bad grounds or a corroded ground, it can actually activate skim.
Oh.
Yeah, I didn't think it was possible, but I found it in all data. I was doing, the customer got his box skim deactivated, and calls me up like 4 months later and says, "Oh, the skim function failed." I said, "What do you mean it failed?" I said, I said, "Were you giving someone a jump?" He said, "Yeah." And someone else had mentioned that, you get enough calls, you start putting it together one time, 2 times, 3 or 4 times, you just start putting a pattern together of the calls. And each year is a little different, but yeah, we've run into little things over the years.
Yep.
So.
Yeah, sometimes I looked at that early on, was whether or not putting a 12-volt regulator, they come in modular chips, but making a little box for that and putting that in line between the ECU has like 3 or 4 power leads going into it. So you only have to get 1 or 2 of them. But, putting on something, but it just was really ridiculous for what it was trying to do. Yeah, you can spike one out. Believe it or not, I hate to say this, because a lot of us have them on the front of our Jeeps, but you screw up your winch and you have a short circuit in the wrench, you can take your PCM out. It's just this whole litany. But you've heard me preach time and time against grounds.
Right.
Because if you have bad grounds, you have floating voltage, because the ground's job is to take the voltage back to the battery. And if it can't get back to the battery, it's going somewhere else. And unfortunately, there's a really easy target.
Yeah, you don't want your ECM to be the fuse.
Yeah.
So a couple things I did see one thing, Mark. When some people call you or go place the order, if you will, TCM and PCM. Again, I know older Jeeps have both, and so my question is like, how can I know? Like on mine, I have the 6-speed, so of course we knew that was going to happen. But like, if someone calls up and they're not sure what they have, and I guess the proper question I'm trying to ask is that we know transmission issues a lot of times are a symptom of a bad computer. So how do you know what your year cutoff is, if it's TCM or PCM? If that hopefully I'm asking the question correctly.
Yeah, no, that's a good question, because a lot of people have no idea, and it's different on every year actually. In the beginning, there was an ECU,
right.
And then they started. They had transmission control modules in some of the early Cherokees, the little square boxes.
Yep.
I'm looking for one. I thought I had one laying around here, but you know which one I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm. And it was the 3-speed. It was a 3-speed automatic where they started the 32 RLE.
Right. And then, so those early YJs are ECUs, and it just goes on their year, really. You've got 03 and 04, which has a combination of engine and
transition years.
So you've got, then you ask, what issues are you having? Because otherwise they're just on there throwing parts at it. Oh, it's the one on the firewall, but I'm having shifting issues. So we just ask those questions, and surprisingly, if you ask enough questions, you will finally get the correct response and make sure everybody's happy.
Now, to all our listeners out there who may be saying, okay, alphabet soup time. Yes, ECU is engine control unit, or your computer that runs your engine. Your TCU is transmission control unit, which is the part that would shift the transmission. And initially, they were two separate boxes. And then somewhere along the line, the bean counters got in there and said, why are we putting two boxes in? Can't you put it all in one box? And somebody said, well, yeah, I guess we can. And then we got a powertrain control unit, or PCU, which is the more common term nowadays because most vehicles have power control modules up until, I'm going to say, probably 2020-ish. And then they started splitting them apart again. And now you have engine control, powertrain control, then you have body control module. I was reading about one vehicle that I believe had 20 different computers on board on a primary power data network, a secondary entertainment network, a comfort control network. So don't worry about the day that the computers take over. They already have.
Well, that's like at work. We have the multiplexer networks that are in the doors. You have to run time windows when you change out a battery. And then you had, again, you talk about the alphabet soup. Ford, for a long time in the late 90s, I think it was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you had, again, all the PCM, TCM. Then you even had the GEM modules, the General Electric module, not to be confused with the places that makes the trains and airplane engines, but and your washer and dryer. But I had one time a customer had a situation with a dome lamp wouldn't work. And, it's a GEM module. I'm like, really? Okay, cool. Yeah, $900. I have a flashlight, thank you. I don't need my dome light and my probe to work like that. And ask me who had the probe and the bad dome light. Moving on.
So Mark, the point is, I think if people have questions, worst comes to worst, it's always you can call Wranglerfix and talk to somebody. And they're usually pretty good at answering questions and asking you questions until they say, oh, okay, you're probably talking about your, YJ TCM, or nope, you're in a PCM world, so you need to stick with the PCM girl.
Yeah. Well, we've got 9 different Jeeps that we test computers in, so it's important to know if it is your computer. We can save you some money on repairs by sending them in to us, and we do ask questions before we just start firing parts cannons at it, because money's too hard to make to throw parts at cars.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, real quick,
and we'll even forgive you for calling a Jeep a car.
Well, hey, Mark is a Jeeper for sure. But the other thing I wanted to ask is, we talked about this. Kevin was recalibrating, the sensors. I keep getting them wrong. I cannot for the life of me today, and I'm a parts guy. It's my day off. I don't remember parts names.
You're talking about what I was just doing today?
No, recalibrating the...
oh, yes, you're talking about the cam crank sensor correlation.
Now, I didn't have to do that. So is that with every Jeep, or is it just occasionally...
No. If the camshaft and the crankshaft are out of synchronicity at all with the OPDA, oil pump drive assembly, it'll throw a correlation code, 16, which just means it has to be realigned at top dead center. And then you've got Kevin has his fancy Autel. They can go in and do the cam crank relearn in about 2 minutes, and it'll then allow the RPMs to get up to 3,000, 4,000, 5,000 if you want.
Yeah, and it won't freak out. What it is, folks, basically is your crank has in our most of our 4-liter engines and the others has a chain that goes up and turns the camshaft at half speed of the crank. The crank turns at half speed of the cam, and so you that way you can get each cycle. You get two upstrokes. One's a compression, one's an exhaust, and then downstrokes are intake and power. And so from the crank's perspective, something's happening twice, as you go around, whereas the cam only sees it as once. And so whichever way that was, speed related. So the gist of it is that the engine, the computer needs to know where that piston is to Nat's whisker. And then it also needs to know where the cam is and hence the valves, so that it knows the right time to fire the spark plug so it doesn't fire too early and you have backfire, or too late and you have wasted fuel going out the tailpipe. And so the correlation of those two, in a perfect world, you'd never have to worry about synchronicity, because the chain would never stretch, the gears would never wear, and manufacturing tolerances were absolutely perfect, which we know none of those exist in this world.
Yeah.
And so the computer has the ability to have a correlation or adjustment done to it. And it is a pretty simple thing. The engine actually figures it out itself, but to prevent it from figuring out too far that, i.e., we're ready for self-destruction and it's still adjusting itself, you have... Are
Sorry.
you getting... Oh,
No,
okay.
they're not coming for me.
Not coming from me. So the whole idea is that you have to go validate that the engine is working correctly, and then you say, okay, what's the difference? And it'll tell you, well, I'm 5 degrees off, I'm 11 degrees off, and you go, okay, I can either go turn the OPDA a little bit mechanically, go loosen the bolt and turn it, although they don't turn much because they're not really adjustable.
Yeah.
But you can do as much as you can, but eventually it says, well, I'm 11 degrees off, and you are just going, yeah, that's okay. And it'll go, oh, okay. So I know that I'm 11 degrees off, and it will adjust all of the tables that Mark's crew so carefully creates in the memory of when to do things by 11 degrees. And functionally, your engine will run as if it was built perfectly. And if it's not done and it's outside the tolerance that Jeep Chrysler has allowed for, then it'll set that code. You'll get a check engine light, and it'll tell you that you have a cam crank synchronicity or a failure. I forget what the P code is on that. And like you said, the easiest thing is somebody who has a programmer tool can go out there with you. We can look at it and make sure that you don't have a cam chain that's stretching or gears that are ready to fail. You come to me and say that, well, I got 245,000 miles on this engine and it's telling me my cam crank's out of sync. And I go, change out the timing gears and chain, come see me, and then we'll resync it. But I'm not going to correct action on something stretched that far.
Yeah.
Because you'll end up swallowing a valve. So get off my technical soapbox.
So any other one of the things too I do want to say is, and I said after I replaced my computer, again, I was up and running in less than 5 minutes, and that was amazing. But I was worried about my trail dash because, again, I use that as auxiliary gauges because, again, we all know the gauges in a TJ are fancy switches.
They're animated switch lights.
They're animated switch lights. So it was important to me to have that. And again, I'm always happy to report that my trail dash, the gauge part of it works, because you guys are doing technical talk about and this is sad. I'm a parts guy. I should know these things. But
OPDA.
Yes, the OPDA and the OBD2. It still reports the information. And Mark, of course, made a great comment. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? That was awesome. Thank you. But so anybody had those kind of questions. So again, things have been really good for you, Mark. Anything kind of cool coming down the other pipe? Anything you guys working on? Anything else? Or
We're actually looking for one of our square lights now. We're looking for Jeep number 10 here that we can further test computers, keep these old Jeeps on the road. And the newer stuff, we're always looking at different things. And actually, we were actually starting a national hunt for someone that can not only repair PCMs, but also TIPMs as well as ABS modules.
Ooh, that would be nice.
That would be a feather in your cap. TIPMs, oh boy. It makes my blood run cold every time somebody comes to me with a TIPM issue, usually on a GM truck right now. Although the Chrysler ones can be kind of crazy too. I'm like, whatever happened to the old underhood fuse box that you could actually understand?
Yeah, they're big failures on the TIPMs, and the ABS modules are on national back order.
Yeah. So
there's a big problem in the supply of parts for our vehicles.
Now, here's a weird one. This is just a question mark, and I don't know the answer. Do you know if the T stands in TIPM stands for total, or what is it?
does. Total integrated
Rated
power.
module. Yeah. That's what I thought. I just couldn't, I never knew what the T was, whether it was total or if it was something else, more Chryslerism or Chevrolet or whatever. It's basically a computer that controls your power, folks. And if it decides you're not worth having a radio, you don't get a radio.
Or wipers.
Or wipers. Or, those other fun little tricks.
Yeah.
Wow.
When TIPMs go, all kinds of silly stuff goes. Your radio, your wipers, your ABS, your skid lights. It's a plethora of problems when those things start failing.
No, I have chased my fair share of phantom draws that kill batteries when a Jeep that runs fine, but then after a couple of weeks in a garage, somebody goes on a business trip and it's doornail. And you go hunting and going, all right, I start checking individual. I normally go straight to the radio, particularly if somebody says, I got an aftermarket radio. Yeah, okay. Let me put an amp clamp or an amp meter in line on the sleep power of that Chinesium aftermarket radio. Gee, it takes 3 amps to sleep. Yeah, that'll eat a battery. Yeah. But, you start going, well, no, nothing's drawing it. But you check the input to the TIPM, and it's 2.5 amps. And I'm going, okay, that means one of these outputs has got to have amperage on it. Nope. I found it the hard way. I found the ground to the TIPM, took that off, and it sparked.
Nice.
Yeah, I was like, whoa, yeah, okay. So the TIPM itself, through its own control circuitry, was shorting out and draining the battery. I was like, okay. And they're like, well, what does that mean? I says, well, right now I don't know anybody that sells these other than Chrysler.
Yeah.
Right.
And the junkyard. Good luck, but then you have to have a program. A computer to turn on your lights. I shouldn't say anything because I got that in my house.
I was going to say, what's that fancy system you have at your house? The HAL 9000?
No, just Lutron.
Exactly. But no, Mark, again, I just anything else you want to cover? Because again, we love having you on, man. You're a wealth of knowledge. And again, if you ever have a question about Wranglerfix, just make a comment on any Jeep forum right now. As far as I don't know about diesel forums, but I know about Jeep forums because I know I'm on there, and it's like the thread's only 2 minutes old, not even, and it's like, I might have to compare. Mark. The man's phone has to be like, I know you silence your notifications. Mark. And it's like, so it's not even 3 minutes in. I'm like, wow, anybody say Mark yet? Wow, I'm sorry I had to drive. I would have helped out, because that is a testament.
It is.
It truly is a blessing to get on there and just, because we treat people the way we expect to be treated. I treat everyone with dignity and respect. And they're coming to patronize my business. If I can't pick up the phone and thank them or help them with their questions, or what kind of person does that make me? So I'm only as good as my last interaction with my last customer. And, we stay low like the ocean, because the ocean always wins.
Unless you get to be a really good friend of his, and then he'll sing you some really weird songs and tell you some really bad jokes.
Oh, speaking of which.
Mark, you are too much. There's a lot of people in this business that we get to know, but there are some that we like to call friends, and we like to call you our friend. You're a fantastic person.
Thank you. Appreciate that very much. You guys have been very kind to us and me, from once we started there with that random chat in the middle of the night, where you were.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember. And here we are, some 6 years later, and we've just, again, we continue to grow, and we appreciate all of y'all's support.
Well, we appreciate you too, because 6 years ago, I was the guy in the middle of the night making a phone call thinking I was going to leave an answering message. And I got Mark Cantrell himself at some ungodly hour to talk about a PCM for slightly altered. So,
Yeah.
you know, it was just fated to be, I suppose.
Well, I do have to ask. If we want to get a hold of you, obviously the phone number. Do you have the you want to go ahead and give the phone number out now, or we put the show?
Absolutely. It's 866-888-7710. Email is mark@wranglerfix.com. We're always a click or a call away.
Sweet, man. Again, we can't thank you enough for having you on, because again, like Kevin says, you know, you're a friend, you're family, man. Anything you ever need, you just let us know.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Well, Mark. Well, then Mark. I guess he left the chat already.
Yes.
Anyway, isn't that great to have Mark on again? And it's a lot of fun to talk with him. He's a lot more fun to be in person because he can cut loose.
Oh yeah.
He has a very wicked humor and is really good people.
Yeah.
So that was really kind of wonderful to get an update from him. Mm-hmm. So before we get into the tech topics, anything, Scott, you want to touch on now, or do you want to catch something later, or whatever?
Well, not really a whole lot. I will say one thing, though, and I just remembered this as we're talking, because sometimes the synapses fire off in the old brain. Yeah, exactly. I saw on the good, again, because it's never doesn't have any information in it, the good old internets. There was a post from a person who purchased, I won't say the brand of bumper, but let's just say it's not name brand, and on his Gladiator, and did a 9,000-pound winch pull. I don't know the particulars.
Long story short, the chat?
No, even worse. The winch pulled one side, diamond is framed, and the bumper, because everything pulled apart because the bumper failed, and it was a winch bumper, and as it pulled, it stretched and twisted the frame. And of course, you know, now the insurance company may total the vehicle, because I don't know coverages and all this. This is secondhand information from the internets. But everyone, of course, on the chat is like, well, you bought a cheap bumper. You bought a Chinesium bumper. What did you expect? You know, and of course, so Kevin and I always talk about, we learn your winching, learn the pull, you know, make sure you have everything not lopsided, because Kevin knows the proper terminology where you take the two straps and center pull, if you will, if you can. So
there's a whole bunch to the science of recovery, and it's not something that is always intrinsically obvious, is what I think Scott's trying to say.
Yeah, those words.
There's a whole lot of geometry and force analysis that goes along with winching, even if you don't take a course in engineering. And you can, unfortunately, even though you're thinking, well, I'm the recovery vehicle, I'm not at risk. Well, yeah, you're the one. 9,000 pounds of pull, 10,000, 12,000, whatever your winch you have, doesn't care which end of the cable.
Yeah.
It's putting its full force on that cable. And so if you're on an off-center pull and you're the winching, you're putting that load off-center on your vehicle, and you may or may not be putting it on theirs on a recovery. And yeah, if I don't have a bumper that is certified for that load, I'm going to talk to somebody who knows something about winching. You know, there's actually companies out there that sell lanyards and cables and that stuff for the construction industry. And they got some people that can answer questions, or you can, I'm sure, go on and do some internet. You're going to find worn, even Harbor Freight, I'm sure, has what's their winch brand?
Badlands.
I'm sure you can get a lot of information on it. And if you're not sure, absolutely positively sure that your bumper can take that loading, you may want to reconsider. I'll just put it that way. I will tell you that I have my winch bumper is no longer made. The company got out of it. It was Best Products back when they were doing TJ stuff. And it actually comes with a statement that it is rated for up to 10,000 pounds of pull, with a big parentheses, if it is installed correctly with all the provided hardware.
Exactly.
According to the instruction. So, you know, it's just one of those things that if you're not sure, go find someone who can help you with that. You'd be surprised. There's a lot of people out there in the business of recovery who can answer those questions.
Yep, that's the thing, because again, they have a couple Chinesium knockoffs of the factory steel bumper that I have on the Gladiator, and again, I opted to get the Warren mounting plate. Yes, it was on back order. Yes, it took almost a year to get. That's the reason the winch was in the garage, folks. But
I wanted excuse.
Yeah, exactly. But I wanted to make sure that I had quality products, because again, you all talk about buy once, cry once. You can buy twice and cry the rest of your life. It's just take that moment, and again, like Kevin and I talk about, even from lifts or anything, take a few minutes and go ahead and just, if you have to save a couple extra months, buy something you're quality with, so that you're okay buying. Do the research. Just because it's a Badlands doesn't mean it's a bad part. Just again, just do your research. I guess.
No, a lot of people have done a lot of miraculous things with the Badland winches. But on the other hand, it's the stories we're seeing now aren't failures of the winches. They're failures of the mounting systems. And even with a good mounting system, I'm not going to take my cable off the front of my Jeep and turn it 90 degrees and pull sideways.
Yeah.
I will bend my frame. And if you don't understand the dynamics, you shouldn't be winching.
Yes.
What am I going to do? I'm going to use something out there in front of me, a big fat tree, a concrete post, something else, another vehicle set at 45, and I'm going to use a snatch block so that I'm pulling straight and the vehicle I'm being pulled is straight as possible, and never really going much more than about 20 to 25 degrees off straight forward. And guess where you can learn that? In my book, it was in the Warren manual. It showed a little picture going straight, and I go this far, you're okay. You get more than that, stop and re-rig.
Yes. Re-riggings are hard. It is a pain, but at the same time, re-rigging keeps you safe, and it also keeps you from causing damage to your vehicle or the vehicle you're recovering.
And we're not doing a show on winching at the moment, so I won't go into depth on that.
Yes. So that was just a cautionary tale, guys and gals. Just, again, just do your research.
Yeah. Yep.
Speaking of research,
those that don't do their research end up on a YouTube page.
What's the old saying is when Kevin and I would teach you off-roading class, because we'd separate, and all the time, and I had one student ask me one time, how do I do if I'm getting ready to break something? I say, if you look to your left and right and everyone has their cell phone out, stop. You're about to spend a lot of money.
Or time in a hospital.
Yes.
Let's hope it's just the money.
Yes. So speaking of time in the hospital and proper research and everything else, man, so how has the internet been for you lately, sir?
Sorry, the microphone doesn't pick up when my head is banging on a microphone quite as well.
Because
folks, go ahead, Scott.
I was going to say, because man, is the internet full of fun this week.
Oh, it has been. It has been. It's there are so many things that I look at these stories and these requests and these, oh, hey, this was great. I did this. Look at this. Look at that. And I just go, oh, no. So for the moment, what we're gonna tech tap on is modifying, deleting, or otherwise altering your emissions systems. Now, this is going to make at least 45% of you angry, 15% of you confused, and the rest of them will go, yeah, that's right. So take it for what it's worth. Whichever camp you're going to be in, I'm going to probably piss you off one way or another. So
let you know you're alive.
And I've talked on most of these before, and I'm more than willing to go to guns on it, having studied it and then practically used it. And so let's start off with the obvious one. We saw some posts about, my catalytic converter's plugged or has broken up. And all of the comments said, oh, don't worry about it. Put a straight pipe on it. Oh, no, go over here and drill it out and shake the crumbs out. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to tell you, no, go get a new one. Number one, if reducing back pressure, as everybody claims, by drilling out your catalytic converter, was going to make a difference on your power or your fuel economy, the manufacturers, who are driven by Congress rules to get those economy numbers up, and the push from the buying public to get that horsepower up, would have put larger diameter cats in there to flow more. the systems are balanced. And when you take cats out and remove back pressure, you can actually end up creating burnt valves on your exhaust valves because they are designed for a certain amount of back pressure. All right. And I've heard people go, oh, no, 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 no. Well, I'm sorry, guys. You talk to the engine manufacturers and they will not even warrant it. If you buy a crate motor nowadays, 9 times out of 10, it comes with the exhaust manifolds and the pre-cats on it.
Yeah.
Okay. As part of the engine, because it's part of the tune and the balance of the engine. You're not going to pick up more horsepower unless you're at the drag strip running up in the 8,000 RPM range where flow becomes king. And at that point, you're not on the road. You're not
driving
anyway.
a street vehicle anymore.
Right. Cats are not bad. If you've got a TJ like I did find out that MagnaFlow makes a high flow cat that is slightly higher. They have tested it, and I have tested it too. And yes, the slightly higher cat, guess what? I'm still California legal with this system. I still have 3 cats on my Jeep, and I can make a front tire fly in the air if I'm not careful.
Right.
2, def delete. This one blows my mind. Diesel freaks are out there deleting their diesel exhaust fluid, or what's called SCR, selective catalytic reducer, kind of like a cat for diesels. Mm-hmm. It's a screen, though, rather than a ceramic insert, a series of screens, usually of platinum or palladium screened. They're coated, the metal, and the soot collects on this because we're doing something different. We're not catching unburned hydrocarbons in a diesel. We're catching soot. And the soot collects on the screens until it gets a certain temperature buildup and back pressure. And then the system goes into a injection mode of high temperature fueling to literally create an afterburn in the exhaust system, and a injection of distilled water and urea crystals, dissolved urea, which is DEF as we know it. You see it in the little jugs by various manufacturers. And that reacts with the platinum and palladium screens to oxidize the soot molecules into carbon dioxide and water vapor. And it's actually a very clean system. The point is, it doesn't really steal any horsepower. Now, when the diesel screen is plugged, people are like, oh, yeah, well, it doesn't stay plugged. As soon as it hits a threshold level where it begins to affect your efficiency, the engine's computer says, oh, it's time to do a regen cycle. Most people that are complaining about plugged SCRs have defeated the ECU's regen cycle, saying, well, that costs me fuel. Well, yeah, but you get more back if you let the system run correctly. There's really not a lot of reason to take that out. Now, if you've tuned your diesel, if you've increased the turbos, if you've changed the airflow characteristics, then yes, your SCR may be restrictive. And you're probably not legal anymore anyway, as far as EPA is concerned.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about an unaltered system. Now, again, if you're off-roading, if you're tractor pulling, you're going to be, you don't need an SCR because you're not on a road, you're not subject to the EPA rules and regulations, and you're running a fuel level that's way above, and a boost level way above what the manufacturers ever intended. So I'm not trying to tell you that you guys at the tractor pull or the truck pulls, shouldn't be doing that. That's a whole different realm. But for the on-the-road and occasional off-roader like us, there's really not a whole lot of reason to delete the DEF system. Mm-hmm. Mine works almost seamlessly, and they have changed over the years. In fact, my earliest 11 would go into a regen cycle. My current 2019 diesel has a selective regen system where it meters flow as the truck is running, so that it doesn't get clogged and then suddenly regen, but kind of continuously regens as the engine's running, and it does a great job. So only time I'll ever see a true regen cycle pop up and it really go into a post combustion heat up is if I've been hauling a lot of load up and down mountains, like when I was towing the Jeep up into central Georgia. I had 12,000 pounds on the back end going up around Lake Lanier in the mountains outside Atlanta. Yeah. And I did kick up a regen situation because I was coaling it pretty hard, because I could have slowed down at 45 in the truck lane, but I preferred to stay with 70, 75 with traffic.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
So again, and then the last one that set this whole diatribe off for me was I continue to see people that have disconnected their PCV system and put a catch can in and go, isn't this great? And my answer is no. You can make an argument over an SCR system. You can make an argument over a catalyst system in a gas engine. But a PCV, there's no reason to delete that. Because you know what you're doing? You're taking the unburned gases, okay, that collected in your crankcase, and you're dumping them to the atmosphere. That has combustible products in it. So it's toxic to the atmosphere, oil vapors. And what did the system do? It took it back into the intake system so you could actually burn it and get some horsepower out of it.
Right.
But no, you want to stick it in a can to catch the oil and then let all the gases go out to nature. If you are blowing by that much oil, you really should just go fix your seals or your rings or whatever.
Yeah.
But fine, if you want to put a catch can in, put a catch can in, but that little tube that comes off the side that vents it, just hook that back up as your PCV system and let the intake take that in. Okay? You've done and stripped the oil out, so why don't you take those, unburned hydrocarbons and put them back into your engine and use them like the manufacturer intended? Guys, it's one of these things that always gets to me is people take a bit of truth, sometimes old, sometimes current, and then they expound it into everybody should do this.
Right.
And that's kind of the heart and soul here. There are smart people out there that know what they're doing. All right. MagnaFlow. Yeah. The TJ's exhaust system was a little restrictive. So they redesigned one that was still California Air Research Board or CARB compliant. And you can buy that for basically the same cost as a stock system. All right. So now you can be EPA compliant and high pro. So
yeah, absolutely.
It just gets to me that, think before you just automatically assume the EPA regulated parts of your vehicle are a waste of gasoline, they steal power, or they're bad for me. It's usually the other way around. I'm old enough, and this is one of these few times where I'm going to tell you old was good. I grew up in the 70s. I can remember polychromatic sunsets due to all of the hydrocarbons in the atmosphere. All right. That has disappeared because of the environmental requirements on automotive manufacturers on various engines. You haven't lived until you've lived in Los Angeles during an inversion layer where the people are told, don't go outside. The air's toxic to breathe.
Yeah.
So you really don't need to go nuts on that. All right. I'm not trying to tell you that you got to be absolutely, Johnny squeaky clean here and make everything perfect. But not every system is bad, and not every system really makes gobs more horsepower. If you, there've been test after test after test. Just go Google, horsepower test cat/no cat, and you'll find that the results are inconclusive. All right. Manufacturers realize that they have to meet all these standards. And one of them is a fuel efficiency one. And if that catalytic converter was stealing fuel efficiency and better flow, exhaust flow, increased it, they made it a bigger cat.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I will tell you that I can remember from the small ones that were about the size of a loaf of bread to what we see now that look like small attaché cases. That's probably why they got that way. I can remember when from an exhaust pipe systems, the entire exhaust system was sold at 1.25 inches. Now try and find something that doesn't have a 2-incher on it other than a 4-cylinder, import. Yeah. And even that's got probably 1.5 inches, 1.75 inches system on it. Mm-hmm. Most manufacturers have taken that into account. And I'm sure there's a bunch of you screaming at your computers or whatever you're listening on, your earbuds, and saying, yeah, well, I now get this mileage, and I got this, and I got, okay, there are those, like I said, some people know what they're doing. But I will also tell you that the EPA is looking out for you. It's really not that big a deal. If you're going to the effort to mods, we've talked about buying good stuff for bumpers that will actually support a winch. You can buy exhaust systems, and you can buy SCRs and those kinds of things that will perhaps increase your power, at least it's advertised that way, that are compliant with EPA standards. So why wouldn't you use them?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You have to breathe the air too.
Yeah.
And the only reason you're sitting here going, I can breathe fine, is because we all listened in the past, because we all couldn't. It was a scary time. You don't realize when it literally was dark and stormy, even though if you drove up the mountainside, you popped out of this inversion layer and, oh my God, it's not so bad out here if you want to live on top of the mountain and commute 45 miles. So anyhow, I'll get off my soapbox. I get that way every once in a while when I see too many of those comments of people out there who think they know what they're doing. And I always want to go, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, I do have an engineering degree, and yeah, I do have a license. What was your question again? And what's your background? Oh, you've worked on farm tractors your whole life from 1952 up. Okay. Yeah, you're sorry. I get going on that. I mean, I just spent the day before this show recording. I spent the morning with a friend whose daughter's a little Ford Focus. Is that Focus?
Focus. Well, that's if you haven't heard of them.
Okay, if you ever heard of Focus,
yes,
you have a Focus.
Focus, yes.
Okay.
And if you walk around with a sharp stick, you have a poke die.
And it was dying and just stalling and giving a code of essentially 450, which is in most cases a evaporative control system code. Well, why is that making the car stop running? And the answer comes in that because of Ford's, the way they designed it, and you have 3 different valves operating this emissions control device, one at the engine and 2 back at the tank, and one was controlling the fresh air coming in and whether or not it was going into the gas tank, like at night, venting the gas tank through the charcoal, or was it venting directly the other way, into the engine, so that your engine could be purging the charcoal canister. And for those that don't know, charcoal canister is just a glorified air filter full of activated charcoal that absorbs the nightly vapors of gasoline when the engine's not running. That could be during the day, but you catch the drift. And holds them until you start running fresh air the other way, which goes through that charcoal filter back to the engine intake. That's what it's doing. And turned out, long story short, everything was working, except that the charcoal filter was completely plugged up after 112,000 miles. Probably due to, as Scott would tell you in his world, they get a lot of these, people being, I can put an extra couple of gallons in the top of the tank, and it overflows up into the vent system. And even if it doesn't physically overflow, the vapors are very saturated, as they call it. And then the charcoal gets completely gasoline logged, not water logged, but the equivalent of water logged.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, the engine can't pull air through there. And guess what? In a computer system, it's counting on that air. And that's what was happening. In fact, not only was it not putting fresh air into the tank because it couldn't breathe, it had a flapper door gas cap, which was being pulled open by the suction of the fuel pump.
Yeah.
And
it needed to breathe.
Oh, it was raspier than an old toad on a cold night, And then the engine would eventually stall because the fuel pump couldn't push fuel out of the tank against the vacuum on the top of the tank. And we were able to sort that out. And no, we didn't delete the whole system. We just said, no, you need a new charcoal canister. And you got 120,000 miles out of this one. So that's actually pretty good as far as they go. So sometimes fixing them is actually easier than deleting them.
Yeah. Well, that's, again, you talk about your soapbox moment and things like that. It's bewildering to me that, again, when people think they have and again, there's nothing wrong with redneck ingenuity, okay? It's just that, again, not understanding that, yes, on your 72 Plymouth Wombat, you could have, what you had. But again, the other thing too, when Kevin talks about clean air, I remember in Tampa Bay, you used to drive over the Skyway and there'd be a yellow tinge in the early 80s. Yep. Yellow tinge isn't really there anymore. We like having clean air and clean water to breathe and drink. But again, it's just the sign of the times. We have to be responsible. Keeping all that stuff intact to me is no difference in treading lightly. You know, you have to maintain, because again, we don't want the utilitarian come down saying, oh, well, you can't have these vehicles anymore because you didn't listen and do those things. But I can remember back in my infancy parts days when you said the bread box catalytic converter. I remember smog pumps.
Oh yeah, and the weirdest thing with a smog pump was the actual visualization and realization of an old anti-pollution message.
Really?
The solution to pollution is dilution. In other words, don't fix it, just spread it out.
Yeah.
And that was what a smog pump was. Now, they would tell you functionally that, oh, no, it's adding oxygen post-combustion that'll cause the hydrocarbons to break down and or combust. And I suppose in some laboratory they probably did. But the truth was you were just pumping a whole lot of fresh air into the exhaust stream so that the concentration was diluted down to the point that it looked like the engine was,
burning
green.
Clean. Yeah.
And it really was just, no, you're hiding the side. You can have a gallon of toxic material that'll kill anybody within 50 feet. You can dilute it 1,000,000 to 1, and the water will be crystal clear, beautiful, and taste clear, but it's still toxic.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind.
Well, we didn't want to go too much onto the soapbox moments, but again, like last show we talked about, my soapbox moment I had. It's again just being responsible. Again, it's we are the stewards of our planet. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
And we're the ones that want to go out and enjoy the untamed section. We're the Jeepers who like to go out and go beyond the beaten path. We want to go out to those places that the vast majority of us don't go.
Yeah.
Okay. It kind of makes sense. We should try to take care of it.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
Maybe be the champions of it.
Yeah, but no, that's basically, again, being the champions and the stewards like we talked about. I do want to, because we are getting close to winding up here, but I do, again, want to say thank you again to Mark and everybody. But I also want to take a couple moments to recognize that the Tampa Bay, if you see my post on my personal page, a lot of the Jeepers in the Tampa Bay area, we lost
a good friend.
A good friend, and again, it's a situation where a lot of people are struggling with loss, and that happens. Again, we all know. Again, I struggle with loss, and so is Kevin. But he was a good soul. He was one of those good Jeepers. He always tried to make everyone laugh. Especially when he wears T-Rex outfit.
Yeah, his inflatable T-Rex. He'd walk around Jeep Beach or these other events.
and details are still, we don't know the whole thing. But the more important thing is that Leroy, we're going to miss you in the Tampa Bay area. You were quite the personality, and don't want to go too much into it, but I will say this, though. If you got a Jeeper that, again, hold everyone. I guess the words I'm trying to say, and I'm fumbling terribly at, is to take a moment to recognize all your friends. Give everyone a hug. That little bit of kindness, because, things happen, and I could be gone tomorrow with a massive heart attack. Who knows?
Yeah, so with anything. We all are only here on this planet for a limited time. Let's make the most of it, for the best of it, and make sure you let folks know, because you may not get a chance tomorrow.
See, he said it so much better than I did. That's those are the words I was struggling with. And normally I'm like, third. Normally I'm a good wordsmith, but unfortunately today I'm just tripping all over my tongue. But no, again, that's what the gist I was trying to say is, don't wait. Tomorrow may not be there. Say what you need to say now. And if it's something mean, just follow
Yesterday's
it.
gone.
I love you.
Tomorrow may not come.
Yes.
Today is all you can guarantee you have.
Is that a Beatles lyric?
Close enough, but
okay.
No.
I wasn't sure. But again, with that, as I say, just again, if you have any comments, questions about the show, any show ideas, any other interviews you'd like to hear, please message us at onthetrailpodcast@gmail.com or the various Facebook messengers, carrier pigeons, and or hand signals with the flags. I have no idea what that's called. I just been playing a battleship.
Semaphore.
Okay. And I've been playing battleships with my stepdad, so I keep thinking of the guy with the
I
flags.
keep running into my microphone. Sorry, folks.
No, you're fine. But again, as always, we appreciate every listener. Thank you very much. Again, please share and like the show. Again, as we talked about, don't forget you got a couple events coming up. The Florida Trail Team Challenge. Crawl for the Fallen is live, ready to go. They are now taking pre-registration. So again, check those out. And then again, as always, Kevin and I.
Jeep Vets up in Georgia has got over 600 Jeeps pre-registered, and there's room for more.
Yes.
Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion is coming up as well.
Mm-hmm.
So there's lots of things.
There's
lots and lots of things.
Lots and lots of things. And so nothing to report yet on the GPW yet. There's still a possible fatality. So the only thing I can report is I have a crankcase full of fuel. But other than that...
Sounds like the float's stuck.
Well, I went to check the oil and it reeked of gasoline, and it wasn't thick anymore. So, we'll figure something out. But with that, anything else, Mr. Kevin, you want to add?
No, I'm off to chores after this, and a few more things to get done.
Absolutely.
So, as we say, time to lock up, put the Jeep in 4-low, and hit the trails. And please remember, in the environmental line that we've been soapboxing on today, please take nothing but pictures, memories, and of course, your trash when you leave the trail. We want to leave it open and ready to go for the next generations of Jippers behind us.
Absolutely. So with that, have a fun time. We'll catch you guys on show 211 coming up here on the 15th of July.
Yep.
All right. Bye.
Proceeding has been provided for entertainment only. Proper service and repair procedures are vital to the safe, reliable operation of all motor vehicles, as well as personal safety of those performing those repairs. Standard safety procedures and precaution, including the use of safety goggles and proper tools and equipment, should be followed at all times to eliminate the possibility of personal injury or improper service which could damage the vehicle or compromise its safety.
What he said. Thanks a lot for listening, guys. You guys have a great day.
Bye.
This has been a Bent Axle Media production.